The first snowfall came early that year. It was late October when the frost crept over the ground, silencing the forest with an eerie stillness. The trees stood like skeletal sentinels, their bare branches clawing at the iron-gray sky. The air felt thick, too heavy to breathe. Jake and his younger brother, Connor, had spent the day hunting near Black Hollow, a remote stretch of woodland where their grandfather once told stories of creatures that lurked in the trees. Stay away from Black Hollow after dark, he had warned them countless times. That's where the Wendigo walks. Neither of them believed in such tales. Legends of flesh-eating spirits were nothing more than campfire stories meant to scare kids. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, an unnatural silence fell over the woods. The usual sounds of the forest, the chirps of birds, the rustling of leaves, had all vanished. Even the wind, which had been biting and relentless all day, died completely. Connor shivered. "We should head back," he muttered, his eyes scanning the empty woods. Jake, more concerned with getting back to the truck, nodded, but something felt off. The forest seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something. Then it came, a shrill, bone-chilling cry that split the silence. It wasn't the howl of a wolf, nor the hoot of an owl. It was a scream so unnatural that it froze the blood in their veins. What the hell was that? Connor whispered, his voice barely a breath. Jake's eyes darted around, searching the shadows. "Stay close," he whispered back, but his voice was tight with growing unease. Before Jake could react, another sound followed. Footsteps, light and deliberate, coming from the direction they had just left. Then a soft chuckle, like the scrape of dry leaves against the ground, echoed behind them. The hairs on the back of their necks stood up. They ran. Branches whipped at their faces, and the ground beneath their feet was uneven, threatening to trip them at every step. The sounds behind them were growing louder, closer. The howls were sharp and piercing, like something was playing with them, stalking them in the shadows, enjoying their fear. They burst into a small clearing, their breaths ragged, their hearts pounding in their chests. The truck was less than a mile away. If they could just make it, if they could just... A figure stepped into the clearing. At first glance, it looked human. A gaunt, skeletal figure with sunken eyes and stretched skin, a horrifying imitation of a person. But the shape was wrong, so terribly wrong. Its limbs were too long, its body too thin, its posture too twisted, like a marionette with broken strings. Its mouth, wide and lipless, stretched impossibly into a grin, jagged teeth gleaming beneath the moonlight. Jake raised his rifle, trembling. "Stay back." The creature tilted its head, then spoke. The voice was familiar. Jake. It was his own voice. A wave of cold dread swept over him. Connor stepped forward, his hands shaking, his eyes locked on the creature. "Jake, is that?" Before either of them could move, the thing lunged. Jake fired. The bullet struck it in the chest, but the creature barely flinched. It was on them in an instant, its long fingers gripping Jake's shoulder, pulling him to the ground. He could smell it now, the stench of decay, of something long dead. It was rancid like rotting flesh, and it made his stomach churn. He fought to free himself, but the creature's grip was like iron, its claws digging into his flesh. "Run!" Jake screamed at Connor, his voice hoarse, panic rising in his chest. Connor hesitated, his face pale with fear, but the creature turned its hollow, dark eyes on him. The last thing Jake saw was his brother's face, wide-eyed with terror, frozen in place, unable to look away. "Connor, run!" Jake cried, but his voice was drowned out by the creature's shrill laugh. Then the creature spoke, its voice low and guttural. "Canoer." Connor's expression faltered. His eyes glazed over, his mouth falling slack. He took a step toward the creature. "No, no!" Jake screamed. The creature moved with unnatural speed, twisting Connor's head to an impossible angle with a sickening crack. His body crumpled to the ground, lifeless. Jake could barely breathe. His brother was gone, replaced by a thing that wore his face. The creature didn't stop there. It dragged Connor's lifeless body into the trees with terrifying ease, the sound of its laughter echoing in the air like a distant nightmare. Jake could only stare, horrified, his body numb with disbelief. He tried to move, but his legs betrayed him. The pain in his shoulder, bleeding freely now, felt like it was part of some dream. The forest closed in on him, its shadows growing darker, thicker, more oppressive. Then, just when he thought he couldn't take it anymore, the creature returned. This time it wasn't alone. A chorus of voices filled the air, a low, mournful wail. More figures, more twisted versions of the men and women who had once walked these woods, emerged from the darkness. Their limbs were elongated, their faces distorted with hunger. The Wendigo had company. Jake stumbled backward, but the creatures surrounded him, their eyes locked on him with the same unholy hunger. One of them, what had once been Connor, stepped forward, its lips pulling back into that horrific grin. "Join us, Jake," it whispered, the voice now a sickening, gurgling blend of his brothers and the Wendigos. The ground beneath Jake's feet began to shake, and the air grew frigid, biting him to the bone. His teeth chattered uncontrollably, but he couldn't stop himself from stumbling forward, pushed by the weight of the cold, drawn to them like a moth to the flame. His brother's face, twisted into a grotesque mask of hunger, was all he could see. And then the Wendigo spoke. Its voice was like 1,000 voices, deep and resonant, echoing through his skull. "We've been waiting, Jake. You are one of us now." The last thing Jake heard before the world went black was his brother's laugh, a hollow, cracked sound that haunted him in his final moments. When Jake's body was found days later, it was twisted in ways that no human body should ever be. His eyes were wide open, staring at something unseen, his mouth frozen in a silent scream. His body had been partially devoured, and his flesh was marked with the unmistakable bite of a Wendigo. In Black Hollow the wind still howls, but it carries with it the laughter of the Wendigo, and the whisper of a man who could never escape.